Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Quest for the Best Director podcast, also known as the Greatest Movie Director Bracket Ever podcast, also known as just three quirky college dudes trying to make a podcast. My name is Matthew Moore. I am one of your hosts, and joining me is my fellow co-hosts who you should be glad this isn't a video podcast because he would go right through the screen. Caleb Ferguson. Caleb, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you, Matthew?
I'm so great. These movies were great, amazing. I had a bit of drama at the beginning of the day. I didn't go into it, but the Wizards won today, which is very exciting. And now I get to talk about some amazing movies.
That's a good day.
Mm-hmm. Well, also Caleb, joining us is the guy who I would never push into a large body of water. I don't know about you. Derek Schwarzinski. Derek, what's up?
I would hope not, because I would drown, because I'm a shitty swimmer.
Well, I mean, so was Cabiria, but she lived. So
Yeah, but you needed a whole city to help her.
she had a squad, and she was like so ungrateful too.
That was one of the funniest ways to kick off the movie is when the guys that saved her, or like the little boys that saved her, are like trying to look like kind of down her skirt when they're like hanging upside down. And they're like trying to chase them away, but they're like, "We saved her. We get to."
She was so ungrateful. Like, yes, okay, they were being inappropriate, but they also saved her goddamn life.
Yeah, that's true.
She's great on both ends. Anyways. This is the Quest for the Best Director podcast. In this podcast, every week we will judge two directors. In this case, it is Woody Allen and Federico Fellini on one of their movies each. For this round, it is going to be each of the director's fifth best movie, which in Woody Allen's case is The Purple Rose of Cairo, and in Federico Fellini's case is The Nights of Cabiria. We will vote for which director is better based solely on this movie. We will have a losers bracket though, just in case someone gets robbed. But once again, that will be solely on the movies that we have watched so far. Anyways, we have two amazing movies this week. I think I'm not alone saying this was by far the most competitive round we've had.
One of them at least.
Agree.
That's either this or like the Monster Verdot Faust round.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Considering Verdot is my favorite film so far.
Yeah, even then, I mean, this is excellent stuff. So which movies do you want to jump into first? I'm down to talk about either, so.
Let's start Purple Rose.
Purple Rose of Cairo.
Or we could do Nights, because honestly I'm kind of iffy on Nights.
So you're saying we should start with either one or the other?
Yeah, whichever. We can talk about the one I'm iffy on, or we can start with the one I'm pretty hardcore
on. Caleb, do you have any preference here?
Let's start with Purple Rose. That's what was first suggested, so let's just roll with it.
Okay. Purple Rose of Cairo. This is a Woody Allen movie, which are always uncomfortable, not only because of Woody Allen, but also because, Woody Allen movies with Mia Farrow. She has that extra poignant, icky factor. But, it's an amazing movie. It's actually very different than those movies. It's about, this woman named... Oh my gosh, sorry everyone. This woman named Cecilia, played by the aforementioned Mia Farrow, who has a bit of a rough life. She has a terrible
Mm-hmm.
and has a hard time keeping a job. It's the recession.
Great Recession.
The Great Depression, not the recession, I'm sorry. That's the 2000s, Generation Z in me speaking. But, during the Great Depression, she has a bad husband, hard time keeping a job, but she loves movies. I can relate to her in that one. And so she'll watch movies over and over and over again. Whenever's in theaters, she'll just watch it that night. For however long it gets in theaters. And she watches this one movie so much that one of the characters, named Tom Baxter, who's kind of a very typical kind of movie good guy protagonist, stand-up guy with a lot of honor, literally walks out of the screen and falls in love with her. And the drama kind of increases when the actor, also played by Jeff Daniels, named Gil Shepard, he tries to stop Tom Baxter from, he tries to get him back into the movie, and they both of them fall in love with Mia Farrow's character,
Supposedly
Cecilia.
fall in love.
Well, yes, that's true. But them supposedly fall in love with Cecilia, although it is revealed at the end that the actor was not so much in love as he was trying to manipulate her into getting Tom Baxter back onto the screen. It sounds ridiculous in premise, but it's so good in execution. So I gotta ask, guys, what do you think of this movie?
I thought it was really fun. Interesting concept for sure.
Interesting concept and difficult concept to do well, and amazing that it was put off so well and so perfect. No, it's not a perfect movie, but it's damn near.
It's really, really, really good. And Purple Rose of Cairo is not a movie like I'm a big Woody Allen fan. I haven't watched a bunch of his movies, but I love Annie Hall. I've often looked up top 10 Woody Allen movies. Whenever I want to watch a Woody Allen movie, I'll just watch whatever one I haven't watched. It's in the top 10 list. I haven't really seen Purple Rose of Cairo be that high up.
Yeah,
But-
it's interesting. I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you go. Yeah. Go, Gil.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's very interesting, the way they treated the sort of magical aspect of the movie. That fantastic of an occurrence. They're kind of like, whoa, this is crazy, but it's not as insane as people would react in real life.
Well, it's almost like they don't act like they act like it's weird and unbelievable, but they don't act like it's impossible.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly.
Everyone's like, "Are you kidding? He's out of the screen," and they acknowledge that this never happened before, but there's kind of this belief that he could, in fact, I guess, come out of the screen.
Yeah, it's almost like the real world is a slightly more fantastical version of our own. Just in that, they react to this completely absurd act as if it's something, improbable but not impossible.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's slightly off. It's slightly askew from reality, so it's not like we have a hard time believing this world that he's creating, but it's distinctly different.
I think it went a long way towards sort of selling the premise, because I think as you mentioned, it's kind of a hard thing to get away with, such a kind of crazy and high concept thing. But by doing this, they sort of I don't know, by making the characters they buy it just the right amount, it kind of helps sell it to us.
Yeah, I think kind of on that, it's all of these kind of factors are dramatized, I guess, but the fact that this is also a period piece, you know what I mean? This movie was made in the 80s, I believe, and
Yeah.
it takes place in the 50s, so it is a period piece, and maybe some people were like, oh, it's not quite long enough, but it's treated as a period piece. You have very typical 50s music, and you have these moments where she's just walking down the street, loving
30s.
life in the 50s, right?
I think you mean 1930.
30s, yeah, I don't know why I'm saying 50s, I'm so sorry. 1930s, so in that way it is a period piece, but so with that in itself you kind of say okay, maybe that adds a fantastical element, or at least not a realistic element. So it's strange that when they add another fantastical element on top of that, it still can feel realistic while also feeling fantastical. It's a really strange but beautiful balance that Woody Allen is striking.
Yeah, there's also this interesting balance between drama and comedy, because honestly, this movie doesn't seem as much of a drama to me as a comedy. Because even serious elements like spousal abuse are treated well, you're she even says to her husband Monk, well, sometimes just put a wampin on me, so you don't love me. It's she doesn't treat it as a terrible thing. She treats him not loving her as a terrible thing. So it's kind of the emphasis isn't on this drama-filled, like terrible thing, it's less traditional, or like not less traditional, but less serious.
And that's what was like so great about it too, is how it treads that line between like comedy and drama.
Yeah, it's really impressive.
Because I think like there were a lot of moments like, especially like the ending of the movie is like not at all a comedic ending. It's like really like realistic and depressing. And I think like the ability to kind of like hit both those notes and how like two people can watch the same movie and one could come off thinking that it's more of a comedy and one can come off thinking that it's more of a drama, like is very impressive because it's just balanced exceptionally well.
It's interesting that you find it. I mean, it's definitely super depressing, right?
Yeah, that's the thing, but it doesn't like emphasize the depressing parts of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was gonna say. Is while like conceptually this should be depressing, I did not feel depressed after leaving this movie. Unlike Knights of Cabiria, where I felt
Yeah,
super duper depressed.
I don't know.
there.
They have literally the same ending. Like basically, like something really bad happens, and then they're really torn up about it, and then they kind of like perk up at the end slightly. Like it's kind of the same emotional thing.
Except for the emphasis isn't on. It places so much more emphasis emotionally and thematically on different things that it's like it's almost like the emotional like takeaway is like distinctly different. Because like
Yeah, I agree.
with Purple Rose, what happens is like the music is always like upbeat and plucky, so it's kind of like even in the moments where it's like I'm gonna put a wampin on you if you don't come with me. It's like, no, Monk, I'm leaving you. Is like, but then there's this like womp 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 music in the background, so it's like, oh geez, it's like
Yeah,
this emotional like I don't know like atmosphere is like distinctly different between the two movies.
yeah. I think like I'm not necessarily claiming they have like the same thematic like profile or like feel the same emotionally, but I do think like even if the ending of Purple Rose like isn't depressing, I would certainly say that it's not comedic like at all. Like the ending is certainly like even if she's like has this really bad depressing thing and then like it kind of perks up at the end, the ending is definitely not like it kind of has like an almost solemn or like reverent ending to it. And it definitely has like other parts that are comedic, but that's just like kind of what I'm saying is that like there are a lot of comedic moments and comedic themes to this movie, but there are also a lot of points that aren't.
Yeah,
Not that they're just depressing, but that they deal with material in like a more serious way. Like the respect for film and stuff like that. Like that's not comedic at all. That's like real serious.
yeah,
Is it real
it's almost
serious or is it just real? I guess yeah, it is real serious. Might be the good word. I think when we say serious, like that doesn't necessarily imply like sad. You know?
No, no, not at all. I mean serious as in like it's something that's like important.
Sure.
Like movies are like you can tell that there's like a little bit of like Woody Allen himself, like how I'm sure he loves movies. He has this main character also loving movies, like, and that kind of almost like religious or very like reverence to it. Not in like a sad or solemn way, but just in like that's like a really important part of their lives and like a really useful tool for escapism.
I definitely agree. So we've kind of hinted at like so many different themes. I think we need to jump onto one. So I'm gonna give you guys a choice. Do we want to talk more about this movie thing, or do we want to talk more about we're hinting at the beginning with the whole real versus fake, which itself is the theme? Which one do you want to
I
go
think
for?
like the fantasy versus reality thing for me is like pretty much the key theme of this
Yeah,
movie, I think.
I agree. So
So
although it's been um however many, it's been 15 minutes at this point. Let's not bury the lead. Let's
yeah.
talk about this theme of fantasy versus reality. Um, there's a line in here. Um, it is. I actually don't know which character said it, which is really bad. I just have it written down, which is what good is perfect if the man's not real.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
Did you write down who it was by?
that's by the Gil.
Okay, that's by the actor Gil.
Yeah, Gil. Yeah, he says he's like when they're. I think that's when they're like fighting or whatever over Cecilia, and they're like, and he's like, yeah, but he's not real. I'm real. He's not.
Yeah.
Even if he's perfect.
Well, I think it's earlier than that.
Oh yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, it's
I
definitely
think
earlier
right.
than that.
It feels
It's
like Gil said that because Gil's definitely said that multiple times.
yeah, but it doesn't really matter who says it right. The point is, I'm sure it does matter, but the context of this theme doesn't really matter too much in terms of this is the main theme of the movie, right? Is it better to have someone who is perfect and ideal, or is it better to have real? And what even is real? Because I think one could definitely argue that Tom Baxter is still very much real. Um, what do you guys think on this, and what the movie is suggesting about this?
I think it's interesting that like the movie like basically delivers a verdict. Like I feel like a lot of movies will kind of like come up with like like a dilemma, and then they'll just kind of leave it as like a dilemma. But this like definitely has an answer to that dilemma, which is that like it's far better to go for fantasy and escapism than reality because reality will inevitably disappoint you.
I felt like it was less that and more that it's kind of like whatever you make into reality is what should be like. It's not whether or not it's real or not, but whether or not it makes you happy.
Yeah, I agree. But
Yeah, I think that's more of the key. In that, on top of that, Derek, that the reason why whether it's real or not doesn't matter is because like real is itself a construct, right? Where this whole romance she has with Gil is for all intents and purposes fictional. You know, while her
Yeah,
relationship with Tom is significantly more real.
exactly. That was the most interesting part because you can see. I don't know the dates. I saw like the difference in like dates between Gil and Tom took Cecilia on. Like even though she's supposedly in this like fake world and they're not drinking champagne, they're drinking like uh uh, what is it, ginger ale. It's like the two dates are so different. In like Tom's date in the fake world is like so much richer and more fulfilling than this one that in this real world with this fake relationship with Gil could ever be.
I sort of disagree with that premise though that like it's not about fake versus real but just what makes you happy because I would argue that like she was arguably just as if not more happy on her dates with Gil than she was with Tom. Like it seemed certainly to me that like with Tom she was more like kind of like caught up in things and just kind of like she was enjoying herself but it was more like a just kind of being dragged along by the crazy circumstances. Whereas with Gil, she was like breathless and really taken away. So I think like she really did just go with what like made her happy, and like what made her happy in this case was a mistake. So I do think that there is like a definite like point here that at least for this person's life, fantasy was better than reality, and she should have gone for the fantasy route. And it's even reinforced at the very end of the movie where her recourse after all this bad stuff in reality has happened is to go back to the movies, and then she's finally happy. So I really think that there is like a definite like point. Like that's supposed to be our takeaway. Because like I don't know, she was definitely happy with Gil.
Well, it's
See,
kind of
I
like
kind of just go, Derek.
I was gonna say it was kind of like less real at that point. I think it was less reality and fantasy, and more like dream. Like she was about to like achieve like a dream that she'd go away with this, explore on this great adventure in this fake world, but real enough world, I suppose. And instead, she gave it up for what she believes to be, reality. But because that's the norm. It's like Gil's like the norm is like of her world, and Tom is this fantasy world's norm or whatnot, or like the average, I suppose.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna definitely disagree though, because Gil is not the norm, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, he's
Gil
like the
is
average though, ideology like wise, not like I'm not talking like actual personality wise or status wise or anything like that. Like ideology, like he believes what's real is what's important, what you can hold in your hand is what's important. And Tom's not about that. He's about going on great adventures and having a great time.
Well, Gil says he believes that, but we don't actually know what Gil believes because.
Well, he says that. He says, like that line. It's like he might be perfect, but I'm real.
Yes, but then he doesn't stay with her, right? So does he actually believe that?
He doesn't stay with her because he's telling her falsehoods.
Exactly. So that could be a falsehood.
That could be a falsehood.
No. He's telling a falsehood that he loves her, not the part that part. I think that part is genuine because even other characters are saying stuff like that, like this fake dude's running around gonna ruin my reputation, is something that he really believes and worries about. Because this fake dude will impact his real reputation.
Yeah, but so for him, he's not saying that she should actually. I mean, he knows he's going to turn his back on her. So, if anything, I think he knows more than anyone that she shouldn't be with him, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying she should or shouldn't. I'm saying that he represents the ideology that it should be the norm, that real is, and what you can hold is more important than dreams and fantasies.
Okay, sure, I see that. Now, I do want to talk about something that Caleb said. We're back to Caleb's, I guess, original point, which is that it's about choosing, I guess, fantasy slash escapism versus reality. I still disagree. I think me and Derek are right that it is about that reality versus escapism isn't what matters at all, and that it is about being happy. Because yes, she's equally happy with Gil, but that's only because she's unable to suspend her disbelief with Tom. So she can't be happy with Tom because, as we're kind of saying, she can't get over the fact that he is fake.
That's true.
For whatever reason that bothers her.
Although, to be fair, it's not entirely her fault. Like, him only having fake money and stuff is like, she can't like necessarily just like get over that. That's kind of just like a reality.
Well, he can work, or they can go back to his world, like he says to do, and his fake money's perfectly good there, and is as real as the money in the supposedly actually real world.
Okay,
that's true.
Quick kind of world building thought experiment. If she goes back to his world enough, when do they just kill both of them?
What do you mean?
Like, if she keeps going back to his world, right, or if she stays in his world, presumably, and she gets all his money there and they have a fun time there, when does she just, when does when does whoever just kill her? When do they just, turn off the tape?
Who kills her?
I don't know, like the movie owner or the producer, somebody.
Oh, you mean like
turns off the movie? Yeah, she turns off the movie and.
Well, that's
because I guess as long as what's his name is inside, they don't care.
Yeah, it's not like her body's there.
If they're inside, it's like they die, but on the outside you die eventually anyway. So it's like, what's the difference?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's like the other interesting thing too is like from my with my point to me it seems as if like the movie is telling us to choose fantasy. Like we never actually get to. Yeah. Let's say same thing. Like don't fall into reality. Just like go for what you want, right? But we never actually get to see her like truly make that choice. So we don't really get to see like her going in the movie and actually that working out long term. Like we don't know if that would ever work out. So
especially because
it's kind of
in this universe even likes her, right? Like
that's true.
It won't work out. Like her life sucks in real life, but I don't. Besides the fact that she has Tom, her life is probably like not that great.
Yeah,
in this movie world.
In the real world, she has nothing.
She has movies,
except for movies.
But she doesn't.
She's in the movie with Tom.
Is it better? Which one's better to have though? Because that life's so monotonous, right?
Well, we don't know if it's monotonous or not. She doesn't make the choice.
Yeah, I guess that's true, but isn't it like by definition monotonous? Like, isn't it? These people only know how to do the same thing every single time.
That's the thing. They only have to do the same time when she's not there. As soon as she's there, they can do whatever they want. Essentially.
No, they can't though, because when Tom goes into the real world, there's like certain things he has to do. You know what I mean? Do you think Tom's given free will? This is an interesting kind of transition, I guess.
In the real world, yes, and in even supposedly in the movie, that they have the free will to not continue the movie.
Well, it's because they can't
Yeah,
continue the movie.
it's kind of tough to say like if he's doing what he does because he doesn't have free will, or if because it's more or less just like a habit, like keeping his hat on and stuff.
Wait, is
Well,
there a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we can
also,
really get into that if you want to.
also he has the free will to not
Becomes
marry.
What'd you do?
He has the free will not to marry the one woman, so it's literally just because they don't want to do those things that they don't, or they're scared to.
Yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe it's like a fear thing.
So
It's hard to say.
Tom comes back into their world and brings her Cecilia along, and that definitely throws things off.
Maybe we could draw a parallel between like the characters' fear, like the fictional characters' fear of like going outside of their bounds and like doing what they weren't written to do, and the fear that people like the main character have of suspending their disbelief and being with Tom.
Yeah.
Like they can't break their rules, and we also can't break ours.
Yeah.
Except
Like
for apparently the only person with free will, which is Tom.
but this dream, I like what Caleb's saying. I think this is really interesting. This dream of um Cecilia's, what's her name, right? I should really like not
Yeah,
forget this.
that's
Yeah. This dream of Cecilia's is essentially like hell for everyone else, right? These movie characters who like, and it's not hell because like they don't really care, they don't have free will, but like if it were her in their place, it would be like her hell, you know?
yeah, that's true. And even the characters in the movie, like they definitely kind of like that routine because they're so pissed off whenever he leaves and they can't go on with the movie. But on the other hand, like the guy who kind of like runs the restaurant or whatever, and he starts like tap dancing or whatever when he realizes that he can do whatever he wants. Like
Yeah.
it's definitely not all one way. Like there's some good and some bad.
Yeah, it's because it's like they said, the main characters of the story are fine with the story because they get the good stuff. But the side characters, once they know that they don't have to go along with the show, they're perfectly fine. It's like once you have a choice of better, the people in the movie are more than happy to take it.
Yeah, very allegory of the KV. Which is ironic, right? Because that's used to explain film studies. So really, Woody Allen's just like on levels here. Um, what does this say about movies? Caleb's kind of posited.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's the right word. Caleb's posited that that movies are the answer, or at least they provide an escapism, and escapism is the answer. Do you, Derek, agree that this is what Woody Allen's trying to say?
I think he's less saying that it is escape, like the choice to make, and more this is the only choice Cecilia has. She has a terrible relationship with her husband. At the end, no job, and she loses, or she doesn't want to go home to her abusive husband. So the only thing she has once she decides not to go with Tom is to escape the movies. So it's like literally just she's just making the best choices she has.
Yeah, but I think like if there's like a lesson, like a moral or takeaway to this thing, it's that like if you're presented with reality or fantasy, you should always take the risk and go for fantasy because reality will disappoint you in the end. Like I think like that's supposed to be our takeaway.
See, I don't know. I think it's strange presenting it as fantasy because it's pretty explicitly nothing but movies, you know?
Yeah, but I think movies are kind of that's the form that fantasy takes in this story.
And it definitely hurt escapism.
Like all this would also work just as well if it was books.
But it's
Yeah, and the
not
dude
books.
walk out of a book.
But it's not books, right? And that's the thing. Like I think jokingly said, but it's actually I think a point there, which is you can't walk out of a book, right? There's
Hmm.
something about the essence of film that isn't really contained in any other medium. Especially at that time when video games didn't exist, right? Definitely not contained in any other medium, which is this idea of the visual, you know?
Hmm.
And I think there's something powerful about that. And you see that one thing I really do think, upon like 2 minute reflection, I really do think the allegory of the cave does kind of impact this Woody Allen's film, where you have like this red light shining on her. You guys know what I'm talking about? When she's watching the movie, it's like this
Yeah.
red light shining. You see these shadows, and it very much is similar to the allegory of the cave, where for those who don't know, it's about these people who like live in a cave all day, so they see basically it's like I don't remember exactly. It's like a light, and then there's like shadows. So they just see the shadows. The shadows basically are all that exists are these shadows. And then one gets exposed to real like actual like life, and it's like crazy to them. Which once again, very much like this, right? Where one of the characters gets exposed to real life, and everything is crazy to him, right? But at the end, they go back to the cave. At the end, Tom goes back to the movie. Um, I don't know exactly where I was going with that. Sorry, I was kind of just monologuing. But I just do think it is explicitly cinematic, right? This movie it doesn't quite work with the book, and I do wonder if for Woody Allen, he's not just saying you should choose fantasy over reality. You should choose like movies are like an extremely healthy way of escapism.
That's true.
We aren't really presented with any other healthy ways. Like her husband's a terrible human being. He is not the right answer, right? He
Yeah,
makes
and
poor decisions. And his form of
his
escapism is
way is
alcohol.
alcohol and prostitute.
Yeah, exactly. And beating his wife, I guess, whenever he's
Yeah,
really feeling wild that night. So I almost feel like he's saying movies are escape. How do you feel about that, guys?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. That's I think that's I yeah, I think that like it's all about the visual quality. Like I agree with that. Um, like you have all these like flashing lights and the dancing, and it's all like very glitzy and glamorous and takes you away. So what I thought was interesting is, did you guys notice some of the religious themes in this? Like, for example, when they have the big fight between uh, Monk and Tom, it's in a church, and then there's that line that I really liked. Let's see, where Cecilia says that like without God, life would just be a movie with no point and no happy ending. Like, man, that
yeah.
was pretty heavy stuff.
That
Yeah,
was interesting. I was not expecting anything like that, because honestly, it was interesting because I was thinking about it for a while. But when she said that, it's pretty much the movie that Tom is in is like another dimension or like another universe, and then we're in our universe, and we just assume his is fake and ours is real.
yeah. They even talk
Mhm.
about that where there's a point where she walks into the movie and the character's talking and like maybe we're the real ones and they're the fake ones. They even say that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's honestly just perspective. To the people inside the film, it's weirder to step out into a new reality probably than at least it seems weirder to them that Tom steps out than to the people in like the real world when he steps into it. So it's like it might as well be real or fake to whoever. And if you assume there is an overarching story to each world and an overarching like creator of each world, uh, which there literally is to the movie and potentially to the real world. Kind of interesting because the creator of the movie world can just like burn the real, and they even like say
They do
that.
it, yeah. They
Yeah,
do burn
and
the
they
real.
said they're gonna do it.
Yeah, I thought
So
that was like pretty depressing, especially when you consider that like I think movie sort of definitely reinforces that like sort of nihilistic standpoint on our own reality that there is no point and there is no happy ending. So we should just jump in all these movies that do have happy endings and so on.
Well, it's kind of like if you assume there's a overarching story as well to the real world, which one's the movie could be up to debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially if you think about how we experience God, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, it's become a spectacle, right? You have movies about God. You have these kind of vivid images of God through art and God. We think of the Bible as a book, as a story, you know.
that's true. Well, the Bible is literally just a collection of stories. So,
And even the
and
teaching of God isn't taught through like people, like gathering together reading. It's taught through worshiping, right, song, and then also just a performance, which is basically the preacher, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who is, I mean, if you do believe in God or don't, I don't think that's necessarily what I'm trying to say. I think you're saying that maybe we are kind of flipping the scripts.
Hmm.
Which kind of nuts to think about. And if so, what does that even entail, right? Which is kind of crazy. Can we take
Yeah.
control of our world? And is there a reason that we not? Is there a reason that we kind of go through these kind of ingrained habits, right? These heavily ingrained habits. Why don't we all rise up as like a species and be happy,
step out.
get free will?
I think that's like what's probably my favorite thing about this movie is how like it pretty much like just great comedy and an awesome romance story, but like seamlessly weaves in all of these like rather deep questions and kind of musings on the nature of life and fantasy and all that. Like that's really hard to do to like catch that balance, and he definitely did it well.
I
And not
totally
being
agree.
overbearing.
Exactly. Like I think like if you don't want to, for whatever reason, think about like all this like deep depressing stuff, you could totally watch this movie and not, and it
Yeah,
would be super
exactly.
enjoyable.
That's why it's so great. That said, I think we should talk about it from that aspect, Caleb, of just watching it as a comedy or a romance. I think there's a lot of still intrinsic value in that as well, especially it
hmm
as a comedy. I mean, it is really, really funny movie.
Yeah.
You guys have any like funniest parts?
Definitely when Tom is in the Ford house and he's like basically like preaching to them and telling them how wonderful of people they are and what they can accomplish in life, and they're just like eating it up. Not like in a bad way, but like
Mm-hmm.
in a great way because it's like a very bright moment.
Yeah. Yeah, Tom is at
And
this
I was
whorehouse. As I said, Tom is at this whorehouse, and he doesn't even think you can have like he doesn't understand the concept of a whorehouse because in his world you only have sex with the person that you're marrying or married to. So they're all trying to like seduce Tom, and he ends up basically seducing all of them
yeah, he literally that's literally what he does.
in this hysterical manner. Another great little moment is when they're all arguing over who's the main character. It's like a
Oh
reoccurring
yeah.
bit, but it's always Kills.
What I thought was hilarious was how, and this also like has a pretty deep level to it too, but how the way that both Tom Baxter and Gil are like kind of equally dumb, even though one of them is like a real person and one of them is fictional. Like Gil is arguably like just as stupid or more stupid than Tom.
Yeah. What do you think of Gil's character?
Mm, that's pretty good. I liked it. I think like it's he definitely has that kind of funny gag where as soon as you start complimenting him or talking about him or his movie career, he just starts like gushing. But it's also like sort of like even though that's like not usually thought of as like a positive quality, like it's sort of endearing the way he does it because you can tell that he's actually so like he's being so earnest about like how passionate he is about like getting that great role. And I know I told my manager that 10 times. It's like, I don't know, he like the way he sells it makes it endearing, even though it's not an endearing quality, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that's basically sums him up perfectly. He's a strangely endearing character, which I think makes it hurt even more when he inevitably, well, not inevitably, when he eventually betrays Cecilia.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I
he's
think
definitely.
visually, the betrayal's even worse because he looks like Tom Baxter, obviously, right? Like,
Yep.
just by seeing him, it's this super, like, useful, like, device that I don't know, like, how much of it, like, Woody Allen's even thinking about it when he's like, coming up with the story, but how useful it ends up being where, you know, a lot of movies you have to kind of, like, cut back to, like, a picture of Tom, right? For that moment to really be powerful, right? You have to have him betraying her and then cutting back to a picture of Tom.
Uh-huh.
But here, you can just cut to him, and you're reminded of both him and Tom. So
Yeah.
it's so perfect. You see Tom in him, and it's like, why can't you just be Tom? Why can't Tom just be real? And just
Yep.
so frustrating, but amazing at the same time. Because Tom can't be
Yeah.
real, and that's okay.
I think I don't know what I thought was interesting is the way both of these movies are like so incredibly similar that like at almost every point that we brought up about Purple Rose, I've like thought of like the corresponding point that exists in Knights of Cabiria, and I think like um, in particular, like the betrayal that comes in the end, I felt was contrasted because the betrayal in Purple Rose, I did like not see coming at all. Whereas in Cabiria, they like built it up a lot more, and you could sort of like see little hints of it coming for a very long time. And
Yeah.
like because you sort of said as a sort of like an accident that his betrayal was inevitable, but I feel like in Cabiria, inevitable definitely applies because you start seeing little hints like probably like 20 minutes before, and then you're just like, wait, is that intentional? Like, am I just imagining it? And like it just builds up and builds up, and this like dread just like washed over me as I watched, and I was like, oh no, I see what's going to happen. Oh no, and like the feeling of like certainty just increased.
Yeah, I was to the point where, like, I was wondering, is this some sort of, like, loop story where, like, this is actually the guy from the beginning or something? And I was just,
Yeah.
like, being dumb the whole time because they definitely, like, make it pretty explicit what's happening.
Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, like maybe we want to like sum up Cabiria before we go
Yeah,
into
yeah.
it, but I'm curious at what point did you guys realize that he was going to rob her?
Yeah, if it's gonna sum up Cabiria, and then I'll definitely answer that question. Well, I feel like we're gonna probably see a similar scene. But Knights of Cabiria, it is a Federico Fellini film. It is about this woman named Cabiria who is poor. She's a prostitute on the side, is implied. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, she's a
Oh, yeah, she
prostitute.
definitely a prostitute. Yeah.
Prostitute on the side. Um she's kind of built up her money to the point where she ends up being able to like pay for her own house. The movie starts off with her getting pushed into the water by this man who's trying to kill her and take her money, or succeeds in taking the money, not succeeds in killing her though. She's saved by this village. She kind of lives her life. She's pretty depressed. She hooks up with the film star for a bit, but that's kind of interrupted by film star's girlfriend coming back. Um, Eventually though, she goes to this hypnotist who kind of hypnotizes her into basically saying her fantasy in front of everyone, like not like sexually, but just in terms of like romantically, her romantic fantasy in front of everybody. And this one guy named Oscar sees this, he ends up just supposedly falling in love with her. Unfortunately, this does not work out for Cabiria because after the two agree to get married, and she sells all of her stuff, and she has this giant wad of cash she's walking around with. Oscar ends up once again attempting to kill her. She catches on, and he's ends up refusing to kill her, just taking her money and running, which kind of just leaves a sad Cabiria. Now, to Caleb's question, what point did we realize that Oscar was going to betray her? There's a scene where the two are eating, and she pulls out the
Yep.
wad of cash. It was at the moment she pulls out the wad of cash where I realized he was going to betray her.
Yeah, that's the moment that I became certain, like for sure, for sure. But as like for me, well, actually, Derek, you answer first.
I was gonna
Um,
say pretty much like when he's like all of a sudden wants to propose to her. Like but he seemed like he had 110% never even thought of it yet. And
Oh yeah.
I was like, that's a little sus. It seems like you just take advantage of the situation to
And
get
it's
what he
funny you
wants.
said that, Derek, because that is a scene I really, really want to talk about for a bit. But first, let's finish up on that point, and then remind me to come back to that scene, okay? Because
Okay, yeah.
that scene's super duper cool.
What I was gonna say is that whenever, like, oh man, this movie's so tragic. Oh my god, I got so emotionally invested. But like, when she's like selling her house and like getting rid of all of her stuff, and she basically like leaves for the last time and gives it away to this like gigantic family that's moving in. That's kind of when like I definitely started to think that might be what's happening because they had basically built up throughout the whole movie that like this house is like her most prized possession, and that's like what she's most proud of is that like yeah she's a prostitute but man she owns her own house, she doesn't even have to pay a mortgage on it anymore, she owns that thing. And then as soon as she sold it and like oh man I knew, oh it hurt because
Yeah,
like they did such a good job of like making that seem so important to her, like ah.
and yeah, it's so tragic, right? Because like it just seems like all she just wanted was to not be in debt, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it ends with her being all poorer than she's ever been, having to essentially have to go through all this again.
Yep. Anyways, what was your point?
Okay, yeah, scene. So, well, first thing I've set up is Fellini has a very specific costume design for Cabiria throughout basically the entirety of the film, right? Where she is really the only character making decisions throughout the whole film. You think that's fair to say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Um,
except
everyone's
for the actor.
he's not really making decisions though, right? Because he
That's the
doesn't.
thing. He's like the only one who makes the decision though. At that point in the story, during that, because he's like, get in the car, sit down, eat the food, get in
Yeah,
the house.
but it just seems like he's acting on instinct, right? Like it's all
But that's
seems
still a
like
decision.
yeah. I guess I mean like in the moment, spur of the moment decisions, right?
But also, like, that's not really like plot point. Like, that's just kind of like what's happening in the moment. But in
Yeah,
terms of
yeah,
like what's actually happening in terms of the
yeah.
narrative,
Exactly.
Oh,
only
okay, I see what you
only
mean.
only
Narrative,
shit
yeah.
her choices matter.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yeah. Then I 100%.
And this is accented by her costume, where her costume is consistently contrasting the background.
Hmm.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but like every single scene she's in, her costume, if it's like a light scene, she'll be wearing a dark costume. If it's a dark scene, she'll be wearing a light costume, etc. Right? Now, this leads to our proposal scene, where it is just off in a light background, and she for once is actually wearing a white like shirts kind of thing with a black skirt. But really we're just mostly see her from the waist up. So really just focusing on this whiter shirt, I don't know what to call it, blouse, something like that, right? White top.
Hmm.
And he is actually the one wearing the black tux.
Hmm.
So they're talking, and she's kind of like, I don't know, I just don't know about this, blah blah blah. And then, once again, we have Oscar on the black background. We have this moment of decision, like Derek said, this spur of the moment. What if we decide to get married? What if I marry you?
Hmm.
In this moment, it is a black costume with a white background. Now she
Like, can you
moves.
remind me? Sorry to interrupt, but can you remind me like what brought them to this kind of like moment of impulsive decision? Like, what was she complaining about at the time?
Oh
She was
gosh.
like,
Yeah,
she
good.
was
Go.
like, what are we doing here? What's this relationship? What are you trying to
Oh
get?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so then she actually moves over like in a kind of awkward way, but not like it was awkward, but just awkward in terms of like it's not necessary, you know.
Hmm.
It's like this water fountain or something because she goes to get water. And she's like, and this water fountain is being loomed over by some building, which is causing a shadow. So now the background's dark, and now it's her turn to make the decision.
Hmm.
It's so cool, and he moves into this with her. So now he makes a decision. The power's on him, and the power transitions to her. And it is now Oscar's decision, or now it's sorry, decision goes from Oscar to Cabiria. It's her decision. She unfortunately probably makes the wrong decision, but I just thought that was super duper cool on Fellini's part.
Mm-hmm. What I think is like an important contrast, because like these movies have like so many similarities, but I think like an important contrast and one that makes Knights of Cabiria like way more depressing is that in Purple Rose we sort of had this dilemma of like, yeah, are you gonna choose, reality, or are you gonna choose your dreams and fantasy and what's beautiful? And then in the end, we sort of get, okay, don't choose reality, but fantasy is always going to be there for you. And that's probably what you should have chosen in the first place. Like, you should always choose fantasy. That's sort of the lesson. In this, there's like no alternative. Life is just really shitty. And like, as soon as you think it's going to go good, it's not. It's going to be fucking bad. Like, there's no like beautiful alternative that's offered. The only thing is that in the very end, whenever she's like leaving the woods and she realizes that she's lost everything and she's like sobbing, there's this like weird kind of like parade / circus of all these kids playing instruments and stuff and like riding bikes and whatnot, and they kind of like serenade her in a way, and then she kind of like smiles through her tears at the very end. Which, as a side note, is very similar to the end of 8½, which is another Federico Fellini movie, where at the end there's sort of like inexplicably this big carnival, and they sort of like console him. But it's still not like presented as like, it's not something as solid as like, go to the movies and have escapism and go off to that other world. There's like not really any alternative to all these bad things that are happening. It's just like, yep, life is going to suck, and then for a brief while you might be lucky enough to think that it doesn't suck, but then it will prove you wrong.
Let me pose an alternative.
Okay.
Because I do think there is one thing of the film that consistently saves her. I'm not exactly sure what to do with this information. I'm just going to present the information to you. And that is childhood, right? Childhood's a very big theme in the movie. It saves her, physically. The children are the ones that save her, right? When she initially drowns at the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
You kind of mentioned this parade of kids who kind of save her emotionally, right? As she's just completely distraught at the end of the movie. And also, this theme of childhood is brought up in Hypnosis. When talking about, for that moment, Oscar, for that moment, I felt that you were 18 again, and you were as happy as you were when you were 18, or whatever, as pure as you were when you were 18.
Mm-hmm.
Could this kind of just being innocence what saves us?
Not to necessarily like answer your point with this, but just to kind of like raise it as an additional piece of data. She mentions at one point that her mother got her into prostitution at the age of 15. So there never really was a time when she was as pure as she was and innocent as she was at 18, because she never really had a childhood. Her childhood was cut completely short. So I think that sort of does confirm this idea that like childhood is what she's missing in her life because it was taken from her.
Derek, any thoughts on this childhood theme? Motif.
I also thought it was, I don't know, there was just a line that the magician says, something along the lines of, or I don't know if it's the magician at the beginning or not of his show, but someone around that time is like, you need to get a husband and get married, have a baby. That's what women need to do to be happy.
Yeah.
That's the pastor. That's the priest.
Yeah.
He's not a priest, but he's like a holy man.
Yeah, it's around that time. Yeah, the pastor, that dude. He was kind of sleazy. But anyway, I thought it was interesting because, like, he even says it, like, straight out, like, you just need to get married and have a baby, and you'll be happy.
Maybe he's right.
I don't know.
Except for she tries that. Yeah, she tries that, and it doesn't work.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I think, like, there's kind of a very similar dilemma presented in both movies of, like, in one it's, fantasy versus reality, and one it's kind of like the grittiness of reality and maybe some, like, hopeful, better future. But in Purple Rose, the good thing is something that you can actually, like, actively strive for, and she never gets punished for striving for that thing. Whereas in Knights of Cabiria, like, there's not really something like good times aren't something you can actively strive for, and even when she does try and like purposefully move towards a better future, she like gets punished for it. Because her worst times are the times when she was like just about to reach happiness. Like when she's just about to go sleep with the famous actor guy, and then she gets like stuck in the bathroom for like a whole night, and then has to leave, like sneak out after he's had sex with her. Like, man, that's some sad, sad hours right there. Like, and
You can't
every
even
time
tell, like,
some,
the time you're sleeping, I think just like spending a night, right? Like more so than
yep,
like the actual act of sex. I think she was just excited to like someone who she admires and is famous and just status. Doesn't have that
yep,
status.
exactly. And like kind of eat some nice food and probably make a good bit of money and get an autograph and all that good stuff. Jeez.
Yeah. The also what's so distinct to me is that like the movie in Purple Rose is like at the worst times will be like happy and give you like a sense of like oh, this is kind of jolly, even if it's like really bad stuff going on. But then you don't get that in Nights at all. It's like this is just what you got to work with.
Yep. But I think what's interesting is there's a lot of similarities between the movies as well because they both have a lot of comedy in them, and they don't like. Even though Cabiria is like I think at its core like significantly more depressing, I think just as you're watching them, it doesn't necessarily feel that way. Like both
Yeah, for
movies
the
have like
majority of the
a
movie, you don't really know where Cabiria is going. You know what I mean? Like we talk about
yeah,
how like we see it coming, but even then, we're seeing it coming like at the last 30 minutes, right? Of
yeah.
like a 2 hour movie.
Yeah, that's also a complaint I had. This movie takes way too long to get to the point.
Hmm.
I don't have to complain though. I like that. That's
Yeah, I
life, right?
actually kind of disagreed. One of my thoughts of Cabiria is that, like, after finishing, was that I thought it was excellently paced. I never thought it stretched on too long.
Yeah, I was kind of the
That's
opposite.
personally me. That
There's like 30 minutes in the and like almost like 20 minutes in that I was just
so what parts? Because I feel like every
like pretty
single
much
arc is in essence.
pretty much right when she gets in the car with the actor dude and for like 30-40 minutes. It's like
So you don't like
Oh
that?
no. Okay, I mean I can see what you're saying, but I think that's actually really important because that whole scene offers basically in miniature what the whole point of the movie is. Like it's sort of like the prelude or something. It's kind of like a lower stakes version of the big conflict that happens at
yeah, it just I don't know. Even if it's like the prelude or whatever, it just I don't know. It's just not interesting at all. It's like it's cool that it like introduces you to the idea, but if it's like not cool, then not cool.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you mean, but I didn't think it was too bad. What I
Now,
thought was a great aspect of this movie too was like the characterization and how they have this main character that's like on paper probably like doesn't seem super easy to like. Like she's really loud and brash and opinionated,
Oh
but I think
yes,
that they do such a good job of making her a likable character and like so endearing.
because she. Oh, I was. This is like something I noticed, but like her face is absolutely like so expressive,
Yep,
like
exactly.
amazingly expressive. Like probably like the most expressive actor I've ever seen.
Yep.
she's a
Incredible.
really good actress. Although, yeah,
Well, it's just like her face, dude. It's like something
but
like the expression she makes are like so literally expressive. Like
they're
it's
very
like
complex. Like the
yeah. If
emotions she's
she's
portraying are so complex with her face. Yeah.
well, it's like if it's like 100% whatever she's feeling is like on her face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think
It,
like oh, go ahead.
but it's not like hammed up. It's not like she's hamming or anything. It's like oh my god. It's like just like 100% sincere in like a way that is so incredible for an actor to do.
I think what's cool is not only is that impressive, like from an actress standpoint, at like how she's able to be so expressive with her face, but at how that improves the characterization of Cabiria, that she is this person that like kind of wears her heart on her sleeve and just says what's on her mind and just expresses what she's feeling. It works on a lot of levels.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now, I agree that Cabiria is a great character and is extremely fleshed out. Although I don't think the characterization in this movie is that great because outside of Cabiria, there were
Yeah,
very few characters that I
yeah.
found compelling.
That was another point I was gonna say. There's like her friend Wanda. I felt was kind of supposed to be like at least somewhat of a foil to like, or like a sense of like common sense in this whole thing. Like,
Yeah.
wow, you're marrying this dude, but it's like she's just so flat of a character that it's kind of like whatever she says, it's kind of like, oh, Wanda. Well, you don't ever get a sense of dread from her. It's like I feel like to some extent she was like supposed to be like the foreshadowing character or whatever, or to some extent or something like this is a bad idea, Jackson. It's like I'm gonna do it anyway. This is
Yeah,
a bad idea, Kabiri. I'm gonna do it anyway.
it's weird because she seems like a pretty simple character, right? Until like the very end of her character.
Yes.
And then it's like you get like super complex emotion, which is like compelling, but it's like, where was that the rest of the movie?
Yeah,
That's definitely my
exactly.
biggest issue with the movie. Is that I just it's Wanda, and then even like actually, and I think this might be something where I'm more enlightened on a rewatch. I didn't find the character of Oscar to be very compelling either,
Yep.
nor
Yeah.
the actor to be very
Yep.
compelling.
Yep. He was. This might be a little harsh, but I thought he was actually really pretty bad.
Which is ironic. 'Cause he's playing an actor. It's like that should be the one character that you really intimately.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think like it's okay for not many of the other characters to be like three-dimensional because it's a movie about Cabiria. Like
Yeah,
her like the movie is called Knights of Cabiria. So it's kind of and it's like it is a personal story about like her personal growth in a way or like how she's interacting with the world. So I think it's like okay. Like I don't think it's
But
necessary for this movie at all.
but that's the thing. It's like there's like at least 30 minutes of other characters alone,
not
especially like
alone.
that pimp guy or whatever memeing around.
He's never alone when the only time the pimp guy's
Alone,
there is
alone without Cabiria.
really?
Yeah, like in the church. Well, I guess they're in the same area, but like they're not in the same shot together. They're like not interacting. Is what I mean. Like there's 30 minutes of no one interacting with
I
this
don't know
main
about
character.
30 minutes.
It's like 30. It feels like fucking 30 minutes. I'm gonna say that.
Also, in my opinion, the whole point of like the church scene, like they don't have to be interacting because it's sort of like demonstrating like what this church stuff is like doing to people in general, like as like a mass of people, you know? So I think like it's sort of necessary to like have because this is like the one scenario where like it's not about the church. It's not about Cabiria going to church. It's about Cabiria witnessing what other people do at church. So it's important to have other people there, and they sort of use the pimp, like the ex pimp, as like sort of the focus of that like observation, I guess you could say.
Yeah,
Because
it's like not my problem is that they focus on the side character. Is that they focus on the side character that we don't care at all about.
See, I disagree though, because I think I actually like I don't know. Maybe you should give like a better example, because I think the pimp, ex pimp, like at the church was like, probably the second most. The ex pimp was probably the second most compelling character to me.
Yeah,
yeah,
my
He was
problem
yeah,
is
actually
that
really
he's the
interesting.
second. He's actually that's my problem is that like he's the second most compelling, and I just wasn't that interested in him at all.
Really, I thought he was really good. Like this guy who's so desperate to find God that like he's like worrying with the minutia of like this praise, like this worship moment, where like I thought it was so. It was both a funny and a powerful moment, which I thought was which is always cool in of itself, where everyone goes to kneel, right? They're all instructed to kneel, and he can't kneel because he's a crippled.
Yeah,
So he's like, "Will this, will I still be saved or whatever?" Or says, "Will Madonna hear my call?" Something like that. Answer my prayers or whatever. Like he's worried that
yep.
like because he can't kneel, he won't get salvation. He's so desperate for salvation. I loved that actually. I thought that scene was really cool.
yeah. I don't know. I
Now,
never find that stuff kind of all that compelling, to be honest.
one scene I was confused about was, and maybe Caleb can enlighten me on this one, was with her. Well, I was confused with her for a number of reasons. She is, you know, at the spot, where they're always hanging, they're always getting pimped out or whatever, and she goes with that truck driver to like the middle of the woods, which I was kind of confused, like why and how she ended up there, and then
Well, that's just John.
What?
That was like, yeah, that's like one of the like moments I think I kind of understood. It's like she had this moment of potential salvation with like the church session, and like she had to give it up for a job prostituting herself.
Oh, that was
Yeah, because she's walking out in the street because she's like following this like these nuns or something, or like this procession that's like chanting, and she's kind of like that's like a big thing that keeps popping up in this movie is like she's kind of like gets caught up in this like looking towards beauty and some sort of transcendental, like higher power, better future.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then it always gets cut short by reality. So like she's walking on the street following this like religious procession, and then this truck comes into frame and like blocks the shot of all the religious
That's
people.
the best shot
And then she just gets in. Yeah, it's so
that
good.
shot is so good.
It's so good.
Honestly, my favorite shot was right after she leaves the actor's house and she's in the lawn just walking away. It was like such a lonely shot. I felt so much sadness in that one shot. It was, and like there was no crying or anything or no actual expression. Just like I like that shot a lot. That's like during my like 40 minutes of being bored. That's like what broke me out of it. For like,
hey, you're being way too harsh in this movie. Okay. Anyways, back to the question with So I don't understand this whole scene with her and this dude in the hat.
Yeah.
This to me.
The one where he's basically going around giving away food to homeless people and stuff?
Yeah, I understand it like I don't understand it thematically.
Okay, so I think to start off on the most basic level, I read something about how like this is like a post-war Italian film, as we've seen a lot of like over the course of this tournament. Yeah, so it sort of like it gave him like it gave him a chance to sort of like show off like the really bad conditions that were going on at this time, because like evidently like a lot of people were in poverty, and like they had people like literally living in caves. Like that's some pretty like hardcore poverty. And so I think like part of it was just sort of like a bit of like exposition and something that like would have made more sense to an audience of that time, because they'd be like, oh yeah, there's people living in caves like somewhere near where I live. But I think also it was really important like on a little bit more of a thematic level, because of all of the different like methods of salvation or transcendentalism, it's like this like charity and like doing good works for other people is like the only thing that offers a chance of salvation, and like the only thing that actually seems like somewhat legitimate, because like the whole church thing is like completely a farce. And like afterwards she even has this great line of like, we haven't changed, like all that stuff that we did at the church, we're not all the same people we were a day ago. But like I think that was important because it was kind of like, this is your one out. Like doing good works for other people is like the one thing that might actually have meaning in all of this nonsense. I don't know. Would you agree?
Makes sense. That actually makes sense. But the thing is, there's also. Do you think the religion's also an out? Like, do you think that he's suggesting there's like multiple outs? Or do you think it is just doing good work for other people?
I don't know. She seems pretty incredulous about the church going. So I think, I don't know, through our three-dimensional character, we're supposed to assume that that's not the option for her.
No, because then afterwards, she still goes to that guy, right? Goes to visit him. The religious.
Well, because I mean, he is religious, but his religion isn't the point. Like he's not going around. Oh wait, never mind. I got two characters confused. Never mind.
But then that's
he's pretty explicitly religious, yeah.
Yeah, but then he gives her bad advice.
Yeah.
I think that was like the point, is that like the guy who's representing this religion gives her the wrong advice.
I also think the other useful thing about like going around to the caves is that we see this old ex-prostitute that's like she's
Yeah.
basically like an old lady now, and so she obviously like can't get very rich Johns, and she still gets some because they don't really care what she looks like as long as she wears a low cut top. And like, man, that is some grim shit right there. That is freaking depressing. And I think it sort of like shows the path that she's on. That like if she doesn't get out of this line of work in like 5-10 years, like that's where she's going to be. She's going to be living in a cave because once you're old, you can't make any money in that profession. So it sort of like sets like the deadline. And for me, like that's immediately what I thought of when I was kind of thinking about the ending of the movie. Like after she lost her house and all of her possessions, like
Yeah.
that's going to be her. She's going to be prostituting from a cave, like a literal cave. Like, oh God, it's going to be so depressing. But
And
like it's done so well because even though like what's happening like probably in terms of narrative isn't the most depressing thing we've ever seen on film, like they do such a good job of making at least me attached to this character and like really feel for her and her situation that like even though like we've all seen movies about like the Holocaust and all that sort of thing that are like pretty much objectively like worse narratively, but like I just feel so much more emotionally attached.
yeah, well, I'm just gonna go back to your. So, you guys keep making like 2 points in a row, but to go back to your prior point about how it kind of shows her path. I think that's also kind of contradicted, but then which kind of further dramatizes what happens at the end by the fact that like she isn't in debt. You know what I mean? She owns a house, and conceivably she could probably save up at least for a while. You know what I mean? Like this house isn't gonna go away.
Yeah, exactly. Oh.
She doesn't have to live in a cave. Um, but yeah, and like there's time Derek's point, which takes the bad advice, right? Tries to, and it's sort of like a grass is always greener kind of thing, right? Where she tries to go for more. You
Yeah,
know?
but like that's the thing. I kind of disagree with this idea that it's bad advice because like I wouldn't even say she made a mistake. Like according to all the rules of life and what should happen, she made a perfectly fine decision. Like maybe she was a bit hasty to sell her house and take all her money out of the bank, but
Yeah.
like it's not her fault. Like you can't really blame her for this. She had a marriage proposal and all this stuff. Like she got really screwed over, and I think it's really
So you're
unfair to
saying
like
it's tragic because it is the right decision.
yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I think like obviously hindsight's 2020, and if we're treating this like if this was like actually real life, like yeah, like you'd probably want to go about things in the smarter way. But like in terms of like what this represents as like a thematic idea, this is the right decision. Like this is what you should do. She wants romance and someone who's gonna treat her right and buy her
Yeah.
things and not be a street guy.
That's the
And
thing.
like, oh, life is so tragic. It just tears it all away.
That's the thing. We already see at the beginning. That's like not the option for her. We see at the beginning, she's
When she gets
supposed to
literally
be,
murdered by her lover. Yeah, or
yeah, her
get murdered by
lover,
her lover.
who she has photos covering the wall that she like attacks people who try to save her for like saying bad things about because she's so in love. So obviously this route isn't like what's normally considered the right route isn't for her.
Yeah, but that's like kind of a weird like claim to make because like people get married all the time. People obviously fall in love. Some people fall in love. Some people get married, and it's just like
And
for whatever reason, like she's following the rules. You know what I mean? Like she's doing what should work, and for like because her life is just tragic and life is shitty, like it didn't work.
man, she should not sell the house. It was kind of reminds me of what's the character from Shoot to Shame? No one's gonna remember the name of this person.
Yeah, of course
But
I remember.
Derek,
Hit
do
me
you
with it.
remember the girl who like sell or who like saves up all the money?
Yeah, Yacht-chan.
Yacht Chan, yeah. She didn't take the Yacht Chan approach. You know what I mean? She did not only be saving money, she needed to be on top of it, right? She needed to be the one in power, but she didn't desire to be in power. She desired to be protected by something and someone, right? Whether it's
Yeah,
a
either
religious
God
protection,
or her wife.
yeah,
Her
exactly,
husband.
her husband, and she can't find that protection. But what Yachan, Tree of Shame will teach us, and for those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, please check out our Bergman Mrs. Music Gushi podcast. It's a great one. What Yachan would teach us is that you have to have power over life Everybody's been that it is possible to get out of that situation. And Cabiria is doing the right things, right? Much like Yachin, she saved up this money, right? She owns her own house, but instead of what Yachin does next is, she gets her own business.
Yeah, and she gets to do probably normally considered wrong way.
Yeah. But I think Cabiria is even at a more advantage than Yachan, right? Where she could probably legitimately find a job. I mean, maybe not because of like the economic situation. Like, she has a chance.
Yeah.
Right? Of like finding some sort of work. But she wants protection. She doesn't want to be on. She's tired of having to do things. Like, I'm not blaming her at all. Her life seems exhausting. But there's a lot of sympathy for that.
Yeah, I think I agree that like things could have been better, but I don't think it's as simple as like she made the wrong decision. Because like on a broad scale thematic thing, she made the right decision, but life just turned on her again.
But is depending on life in itself the wrong decision?
I mean, we live in life. You can't not live in life.
No, that's the thing. That's like, I think, like, she can't depend. Like, these people that are disadvantaged can't depend on life. They're in they're a disadvantaged situation. If they depend on life, they normally
have to, yeah.
Yeah. If they do the normal things that are good for them, they're not going to get the things that they need.
I don't know. I still think you guys are being too harsh. Like, she is like working for herself,
saying,
and like.
No, this is like a commentary on like the society they live in.
I think that's
what
happening.
The movie's saying. Like, their society's so fucked up. Even if you do the right things, you're screwed. You have to do the wrong things or the twisted things to get ahead. That's why, these lovers that keep trying to kill her for her money are doing the things that they're doing because they're doing the wrong things to get ahead.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, any final thoughts on Nights of Cabiria? I'm sure we have plenty, so any more?
This is like, final. I can see why this is a neo-realist movement film, because it's definitely a good commentary on their society.
Yeah, for sure.
I thought
also, I was going to say, this is very, very similar to Monsieur Bordeaux, but in a flipped kind of direction.
Yeah, I'm curious where you're going with this one.
Because it's like almost the complete inverse, but same kind of situation, because Monsieur Bordeaux is killing the widowers, and I guess technically Cabiria should be dead like twice, and she keeps getting her money stolen from lovers that are trying to kill her. And also, she's in a disadvantaged situation, and the women Monsieur Bordeaux kills for the money are in a distinctly advantaged situation.
Yeah, and also it's like also different in terms of Monsieur Bordeaux. He's trying to. He lives a normal life, and he's trying to live an exceptional life. Like he basically wants to retire as young as possible, while she lives a terrible life and just wants to live a normal life.
Yeah, that's why it's like almost like they're on like the same like X quadrant, but like inverse. So it's kind of like. It's like they're almost on this. They're like inverse functions on the same graph.
I see what you're saying. One thing that I thought was interesting is how the scene, like they're like pretty much right after the whole like hullabaloo about religion and like going to the church and stuff, is when she goes to the hypnotist, and like after he takes off his hat, he has on this like little cap with like horns on it, and it's funny how she like goes from like all this like religious stuff to the devil.
That guy's the worst. I hate that hypnotist. I hate hypnotists in general, dude.
Really? That was a great scene, though.
Yeah, it's a great scene, but I hate hypnotists. Don't you guys?
Yeah, they're definitely distinctly creepy.
Yeah, what's up with those guys? Weird.
I never seen one in real life, so I wouldn't know.
They're weird, dude.
I think they gotta be fake, bro. Like people can't actually hypnotize you and make you think you're rolling a boat and act like a chicken and stuff.
I don't understand.
If you could actually do that, the military would be all over that.
Something's going on there, okay? Something's happening with these hypnotists. No one knows. Everyone just accepts it. It's strange. No one talks about it until one shows up. Like, oh man, it's a hypnotist.
That's true. People do not talk about this enough. It's literally a person that can claim to make you do whatever they want.
And that people pay money to see this guy too, right? That's the craziest part.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my mom claims that like she actually like was with at a hypnotist show with somebody, and she knows that that person like would not like she wasn't a plant, and she
Mhm.
like got up there and just started acting like a chicken,
No,
and
yeah,
was
I
like
know
not that kind of
people.
personality. Like that's weird. All right, next episode of the podcast is a special edition. All we're doing
It's
is
talking
debating
about.
hypnotism.
We're gonna do our research though. We're gonna have. We're gonna read the Wikipedia page in depth. I'll
But that's
interview a
actually like
hypnotist.
that was actually like my favorite scene probably is when like she's being hypnotized and like living out this fantasy of hers. Like, oh man, that was just like the aesthetics when like he lays that like crown of flowers on her head. Like, man, that was so pretty and like so feelsy. And like those moments hit so hard when like because this movie is all about this like stark contrast between these like very like depressing, dreary moments, and then like all of a sudden she'll kind of be like soaring in this like beautiful, aesthetic, glorious moment, and then immediately crash back down, and then immediately go back up, and like that was like the highest high when like it's just like this gorgeous scene, and she's like living out this fantasy. And again, it kind of comes back to the theme we've been talking about with Purple Rose of like this fantasy of hers and how it's so much better than her reality, and how she like still should be trying to go for it. And
It's really good.
And that's also an interesting point. They're like so different because like the choice for Cecilia is like the fantasy because like otherwise she's gonna end up with nothing. So it's kind of like all or nothing for her. With Cabiria, it's kind of like nothing. If she goes for her fantasy, she gets nothing, or if she sticks with the norm, she gets the same. So the status quo. So it's kind of like I don't know, almost a prisoner's dilemma.
yeah, exactly. It's actually incredible that these movies ended up getting paired against each other because
Yeah, it really is
on the
insane.
plot standpoint, they're like literally the same movie. Like it almost makes me feel like they, like Purple Rose had to have like had this as some degree of inspiration.
It is Woody Allen, so we could probably watch this movie.
He watches, yeah,
Yeah.
like he takes a lot of inspiration from I know Ingmar Bergman. I don't know about like Fellini, but I'm sure he. I mean, he knows his film for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm sure he's seen it. I just another thing to point out is like all of the little things they do to characterize Cabiria. Like she's always biting her nails. And like every time she takes a drink of something, she wipes it like kind of like wipes her mouth with her wrist. And like all of these like little ticks and little things she does like just really brings this character to life. And I think that's why I felt like so attached to her. Is it was just really masterfully done, both from like an acting perspective and a writing perspective. Like, man, what a great character.
And okay, so I think it's funny because I think there's one gigantic aspect of Cabaret we haven't talked about yet that I'm realizing we haven't talked about, which is honestly outside of um perhaps like the character Cabaret, like outside of I don't know how to say her, Giulietta Messina's performance. I think it's probably like the second like most distinct feature of the film, which is its score.
Oh yeah, true.
We haven't talked about this at all, and not just a score like um as individual pieces, but like this weird contrast between the diegetic and the non-diegetic, meaning like what's in the film, what is in the story of the film and what is being edited into the film, you know, post that outside of the actual story.
Hmm.
What do you guys think of the score?
Like the very end scene when the guys are playing the music around her and she's like walking, like smiling through her tears, like the music was so goddamn haunting. Like I think after we finish recording, I'm gonna go watch that scene again because that was just like so powerful. And the music like just perfectly like sets the tone. Like 'cause it's like kind of like melancholy and sad, but it's kind of like paradey and joyous at the same time. Like it's really like that's like what life is like. This is like the most human movie I've ever seen in my entire life. It's like has all the emotions.
Derek, thoughts?
Um, I didn't really. Probably the moment I only. Probably the moments I took notice of the score was like only when she's like the really sad moments, like when she's beginning and like the end. So
That's crazy that you only took notes square in those moments. Because I think There's a bunch of moments where the score's so strange. Like I said, it'll transition from like diegetic to non-diegetic, and you can't even tell when it's transitioning. But there's so many like scenes with actual music, right? Where like they're playing music. I don't know what to call it, at the spot. That's all I know what to call it, right?
Yeah.
You know, at the spot they'll be playing music, or like there's a scene like where she's like dancing and they're playing music, and then she walks away, but the music doesn't quiet down. Also when she's with the actor, he's playing Beethoven.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot about that moment. That was actually the moment. I was thinking about it because I thought I remembered something about the actor and music, but that moment, oh my god, the Eighth
It's
Symphony of
so good.
Beethoven.
It's
I
really
was
good.
like, I had no idea where it was going, but it was so perfect for that moment.
Mhm. And the butler or whatever brings up the food, and it's like da da.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? This is like on some levels right now.
But then it stops, and like this more jazzy music starts to play, but it's strange because like why did it go from classical to jazzy, and is it going from classical to jazzy, or is we just hearing the jazzy part? I mean, this kind of stuff is constantly happening. He's constantly manipulating sound. And I found it so compelling.
Yeah, I also wonder if he intentionally used the eighth movement because that was like Beethoven's like one of his more famous going against the grain of classical tradition. So I wonder, like that was like a
Interesting.
defining moment of like a transition moment in his career. So I wonder if that was intentional or not, because apparently this is like a transitional movie for Fellini.
I don't know. I'm don't quite understand why he blurs music like this, but it's so compelling to me. And then the music stops, of course, diegetically when the wife calls in the actor scene. When the wife calls,
Oh
what was
yeah,
it?
the girlfriend.
Yeah, the girlfriend, not the wife. When she calls, or is it the butler? I don't remember. Someone calls informing them at least that the girlfriend is there, and
Yeah.
it's so much music. You know, like scenes. There's so much compelling. It's like probably the most compelling part of the music movie to me, visually and sonically, where she calls and the music stops, and then also at the same time, this isn't really music related, but we get this really cool shot of like her shadow as she's like knocking on the door,
Oh yeah, that was
and
really
then when she enters, obviously the shadow disappears, but then when he sneaks Cabiria out, one's gonna get the same shot of her shadow, and this time as she has to depart. I thought it was so cool. And on top of that, I thought it was cool because she doesn't walk backwards, which I think would have been like which is what you expect to happen, right? You see the shadow, you expect to kind of like slowly dissolve, as she walks backwards, or is that how shadows work? Or would it slowly get bigger? Whichever way. Um, but instead she moves sideways, so she just breaks that for us. There's a lot cool music wise happening in this movie, and visually happening in this movie, and this is leads us, I guess. Are we good? Any other things to say?
yeah. I don't know. It's like it might be cool, but I don't know what it does like for like the scenes and like thematic wise. Cause like for Purple Rose, I definitely can see like it like heightens like emotionally or like if on a scale from like sad to happy, it like pushes the sad moments towards happy and like kind of the happy moments up a bit more. So it kind of like pushes it further along the happy scale. But I don't know what doing like in this kind of weird.
I mean, I was hoping when you guys were giving a suggestion. I assumed you guys noticed this too, but
I I
in
think that
conflict
what
with
it
the
does
podcast.
is it distinguishes those moments, like how I kind of said before, how like there's these like really dreary moments, and then there's these kind of like soaring happy moments, and I think it just distinguishes those like highs from those lows, and like sort of sets them apart better, and it makes you sort of realize like, oh yeah, like we're watching something that's actually like transcendental and beautiful right now, and this is like definitely very distinct from like her normal drudgery.
I just think it's a lot more than that. Like it's just so intentional Man, I wish you guys could like rewatch the movie. I wish we could like all rewatch the movie, within 10 seconds and come back and talk about this because like it's so intentional. And of course, you have like the nuns. The nuns are always singing, and um, she's at the park. And I don't know if there's music. I think there is music playing at the park. Which also that seems ridiculous. Why are those guys at the park playing soccer or whatever? Why are they like in polos and like sweatshirts and like pants, khaki pants? You guys notice that?
I think they're supposed to be like well off. Like actually, I don't know because like all of the dudes are wearing like weird clothes.
Yeah, it's strange, but not important. Um, but in that scene, so she sees the nuns and you don't hear them, and then she isn't really that much closer. Like she is somewhat closer, but like the nuns are so loud in her ears. Like he really manipulates diegetic, non-diegetic. And I wish I could find out why. And I'm sure there's a reason that I just not smart enough to understand. Gosh, I guess. I mean, it confuses you, right? It doesn't make you feel one emotion or the other.
Yeah,
It really
honestly, like
makes you
I kind of forgot.
confused.
Yeah, I kind of forgot. But that moment where Beethoven came on, like I was
It's
like,
really good.
it was good, but it was like I was legit confused because like I that was like another moment that kind of like broke me out during that. Like I was just like so confused what that was supposed to be about because like it's out of nowhere and I don't understand thematically even now like what that's supposed to be. Like
And I almost wonder if that's kind of what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to make you think critically, right? By taking you out and bringing you back in, taking you out and bringing you back in. Because the music's both like immersive and distracting. So possibly
Mm.
that.
because it's like they're like chilling right and like I guess flirting with one another and all of a sudden he puts on this like eighth symphony of Beethoven, which is not a very calm and chill
Yeah.
symphony. That's not the one you choose if you're trying to like get down and dirty with a prostitute. At least I don't imagine most people are gonna choose that, especially like not the first movement. So I have no idea what that's supposed to be.
Now, one last thing I want to talk about, and then we can go to our voting on different things. And I apologize to viewers, 'cause this is a long podcast. But these are two great movies. I want to go back to the hypnotist scene that Kayla's talking about, his favorite scene, supposedly. Um, we get kind of Purples of Cairo moment where
Hmm.
she is standing and we get a shot from, I think it's like basically behind her, right? Or not behind. I think she's looking. I can't remember if she's looking towards the camera or like away from the camera.
It's towards.
It's towards the camera, and then the camera is projecting on the light from the spotlight is projecting onto her, but it looks like a camera. It looks like a projector light, doesn't it?
Hmm.
The spotlight looks like a projector, and the audience looks like a movie theater audience.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're all they're all focused out,
Hmm.
and then the perspective flips, and you get basically from the audience's point of view of just like it's like a very standard shot of kind of the curtain and like set and then her with the spotlight in the middle, and it very much is like theater. I don't know. Once again, I don't know why he's doing these things. He's doing so much of this film, but you get once again this kind of dichotomy between like the cinematic and the theatrical. Cool stuff. Not sure why he does it, but I really liked it.
Yep, me too.
And I think it is, I guess, because it's like escapism reality, right? Well, that is
Yep.
what theater and film are. Is it's escapism versus reality. Where like when you go to theater, you want to have like a very real human experience, and when you go to a movie, you want to have a very you know out of body sort of escapist experience. And it's crazy that she's having this escapist experience while everyone's having this very real, raw human experience.
That's so true. I didn't even think about it that way.
So these are the cool things that I really liked about this movie. They're both just so, so good. We have to vote. But first, we gotta do our voting on other categories. Favorite quote from either movie. I'm
Okay,
not
I
gonna go
got
first
one.
this time because even though you guys kept stealing mine last podcast, Luckily, I think I have enough that I'm able to find one. Go for it, Caleb.
Mine is from Knights of Cabiria, and I believe it was Mr. Oscar saying to Cabiria, and the context is about he's basically talking about like these beautiful moments in life that I've kind of described before, and he says, "The cynical mask on us drops off, and all that is good in us awakens." And it's just like so cool that like it kind of like that really like sums it up because she has this like cynical mask on and she's basically become this sort of like brutish crude not brutish but sort of maybe like rough around the edges kind of person, um because of her circumstances in life, and that like when and if life does smile upon her and like graces her with some good times, or any of us with some good times, like all of our cynicism can drop away and the good times will win out and our better nature will prevail. And like
Well, I
I don't know, that
think
was just like such a beautiful line.
more than that, to kind of give the full quote, it's we can all pretend to be cynical and scheming, but when we're faced with purity and innocence, the cynical mask falls off, and that is um, and all that is best in us awakens. I think it's key that it's when we all pretend to be cynical and scheming, right? Where he's saying
Uh,
um that oh that basically it's we don't want to be cynical and scheming, you know? Like, or we do want to be because we find it gives a strong presence, but like very inwardly, we kind of long to not have to put up this facade, right?
which is sort of true in his case because he definitely did seem very conflicted about betraying
Yeah,
Cabiria.
and it's also true in her case, right? Where we see that like she really doesn't like pretending to be this super strong woman. She would just love to be reliant on somebody, you know,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
and not have to worry about anything. And once again, comes back to our key theme of, or it's one of our key themes of like her wanting to be protected versus maybe she just needs to conquer life.
Yeah.
Derek, favorite quote?
Couldn't think of one.
You can't think of one between the two movies. There's so many good ones.
Mm, I keep remembering something during like when the RKO like executives in the office, and he's like talking about like like that whole banter situation between like the secretary and like the executive, like, oh, you got to do something, Roger. It's like, what am I gonna do? He might be raping folks. It's like, what? Yeah, you might have to go out of business. What?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
that
really
definitely
fun
like
one.
plays into the whole like this world that we're watching, even in real life, isn't necessarily as realistic as our own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just thought that was so hilarious. That
Also, in
whole
that scene, a really funny quote is like they're talking about like how does this even happen? He's like, it's New Jersey, anything can happen.
yeah.
Character says it so perfectly. Um, also like, oh man, that movie has so many funny quotes. Um, like there's like where they're talking about like how boring the movie is, like just random people who are watching the movie, like when now that Tom has
Oh
left,
yeah.
and they're like you don't understand, or that's wrong one. Like look at this, they sit and talk with no action, nothing happens, and then they're like, I want what happened in the movie last week to happen this week. That's what life's all about.
That was
That's
a good one.
really funny. Um,
Yeah. Also, during the scene when they're in the audience, there's like the psychologist and his wife, and she's like, "My husband is a personality study or something, studies the human psyche or something like that."
human
It's like,
condition, I think.
but
Yeah.
he's not very yeah, human condition. It's like, but he's not very good with people. This is perfect for him. He's like, what do you mean I'm not good with people? Well, you're not very good with my son.
Yeah, my
Uh,
son-in-law. Yeah.
your son-in-law is like, well, he doesn't know how to conversate. You gotta open him up. And it's like, he's a psychologist. You had to open him up. It's like, well, I shouldn't have to open him up. That's not very sociable of him. See what I
But
mean? He's not very
yeah,
good with people.
that's these are much like really a quick little funny dialogue. Honestly, I like this Woody Allen so much better than like any non-Annie Hall traditional Woody Allen. You know what I mean? Where it's like less in your face. You still get all like the quirky little like Woody Allen dialogue, but like not with like the same obnoxious characters.
Yeah, I like this a lot because like there's so many like deep levels to it, but it's like there's no like like almost obnoxious like assumptions on the audience to be made. Like it doesn't need you to be anything but what you are. Like you can look at this as deeply as you want, which I appreciate.
I agree. And I gotta do my favorite quote, Derek. My runner-up is from Purple Rose of Cairo. That's right, I have runner-up and a first choice, where I actually don't remember who says it, but they say the most human of all attributes is the ability to choose.
Yes.
I think it's one of the random characters in the movie. I thought that was so good and really sums up the movie so perfectly. And there's so much to that. And then another movie that I like, or another quote rather, I like that was a bit more subtle, but I thought was just so compelling, was when she's with the man with the hat, who's walking her around to all the caves, and she's like, "Why don't you ever come out? Why don't you ever help them in the daytime?" And he says, "In the daytime, the poor wander about. How would I ever find them?"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's like so poignant and like such a good commentary on society, and like and it can really be explored further. We don't have time for that. Favorite scene?
Uh, that's really tough because there's a lot of good scenes I liked in Purple Rose, and there's like even like I don't know, probably like honestly probably I'm gonna cheat and do two, but like the scene where she's at the diner with her sister and they're just kind of like fiddling around working, and it's like so fast paced and like in your face, yet they're somehow still committing to this, this dialogue of
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to set you up with this guy here. I would like you to meet him, and he's just sitting there. He's like, I'm an exterminator.
The guy's such a dork. He's so amazing. He's like a dorkopotamus.
And I'm also gonna do the like pretty much every single thing in that theater is really gold.
Yeah, they're all
Like,
amazing. Caleb, your favorite?
Either the hypnotism scene or the church scene in Cabiria,
Um,
because I don't know, so like emotionally powerful, and like the church scene has like so much going like on. Like there's both like beauty and there's like horror and disgust, and I don't know, like it very much is like a miniature of the whole movie in that like it has like every single human emotion. It like really sums up what it is to be a human.
I really like that choice. I'm gonna go with the date scene. I think it's so fun. The date scene in
yeah,
Cobra Cairo in the actual movie, like in the
Yeah.
film. I think it's just
yeah.
so fantastical and fun. Um, Favorite character?
Ooh, that's a toughie too. Um,
I'm gonna go with Cecilia. I mean, she's really good, right? She's just
yeah,
so likable.
yeah.
Caleb.
Cabiria, honestly, I think I relate. I think out of like this is gonna be a hot take. This is my new Caleb. I'm making hot takes, and I'm not apologizing.
Go for it.
Cabiria is the character that I have most felt emotionally attached to in any piece of fiction ever.
Wow.
I feel for Cabiria.
That's
She
a
like they did such a good job of characterizing her and making me feel for her. Like man, I
Man,
love that character. She's
these are
so
big
good.
takes.
Yeah.
These are
Oh,
big
that's
takes.
me. That's me. 2019 is coming up, baby. You're gonna get some
You get a
fiery
hot
hot
take.
take.
Hey, keep it coming. Great for podcasting. Derek.
I'm gonna say Tom because I don't know. He's just like a bright light.
He's a
And
lad. He's
purple.
a great guy.
Yeah, and purple. But he's like a lad in like the best ways possible.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then best performance. I'm definitely going Cabiria.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's...
She
And
carries
now,
that movie so hard.
I think I know both you guys' answers. I think it's my answer that's up for debate. But Derek, which movie did you like better?
Uh, I'm just gonna go with Purple Rose because I don't know. I like the ideas in Purple Rose Miller because the idea of like what's real and what's not is like something I've always found really interesting. So that's gonna have to win by default.
Caleb?
Cabiria, hands down.
Yeah, I figured you said that. So it's up to me. Um, I was pretty undecided coming into this podcast, and honestly, it sucks because through this podcast, I've actually gotten more excited about both movies. We've had some really great discussion. That said, I think what's most compelling with me to about Purple Rose of Cairo is something that I think Caleb said, where it's the movie is both so accessible, like as like a cinema watcher and as just like a very casual film fan, right? And I really like that this movie. So for that reason, I'm gonna go with Purple Rose of Cairo. Although, maybe expect to see Cabiria in our losers bracket. We'll get to that later. So Purple Rose of Cairo makes
Hey!
it. Purple Rose of Cairo makes it. Congratulations, Woody Allen. Um, his next film is gonna be. Ooh, it is Hannah and Her Sisters, which is actually some people say it's the best Woody Allen movie. So I haven't seen it. I'm excited to see it. Woody Allen will be facing. Who will he be facing? I should really have this mapped out clear, so I apologize, audience, for that. He'll be facing the winner of Louis Buñuel and Michelangelo Antonini. So that should be interesting, especially if, depending on who wins that. Get end up either playing another neorealist or get end up playing another weirdo, another film scholarly weirdo. To be fair. So that brings us to our last piece of the agenda. Which movie are we watching next? We have Hitchcock versus Visconti, um,
Let's do
Godard
Ozu.
versus Lynch. What's your Dirk?
Let's do Ozu or Corso, so we don't have to do another Italian for a little while. It's a little Italian stack.
Yeah, you guys want to do Ozu? Japan versus the
Sure.
U.S. A real battle, World War II style.
Yeah, these are a lot of the World War II pre and post films going on here.
Yeah, exactly. So next up will be Yasujiro Ozu's Early Summer versus Howard Hawks' Only Angels Have Wings. So next time, I am Matthew Moore. I am here with Caleb Ferguson, Derek Schwarzinski, and remember, watch more movies.